Hello, welcome to another IT Wildcard episode, and it's one where I'm actually talking rather than just putting text up on screen. So, I've just finished an online course, CS50's Introduction to Programming with Python. Now, anybody that watches my other content over a long period of time will know, or it's probably come through, that I have a passion for lifelong learning. And I've been using Edex, which is a platform which is delivered through for a long time now. We'll talk about some more stuff towards the end of the video. But for this video, what I wanted to do is a sort of personal review of CS50, Introduction to Programming with Python, or I think it's called CS50P. And my own experience of doing it, which, spoiler alert, was excellent. I'd thoroughly recommend this course, but I'm going to explain, there's a few caveats to this in terms of, where I am on my programming journey and other things, which I'll talk a little bit as I go along. This will probably be a long video because it's a sort of in-depth look at the course, what to expect, generally, and some pros and cons. There's a lot more pros than there are cons, and again, spoiler alert, most of the time when I have cons on an online course or any course, it's generally because I've misunderstood the questions. So I've learnt to operate through a principle of charity, where my default position is I've probably misunderstood what has been asked of me, and I would say 99% of the time that happens when I'm doing courses. So yeah, read the questions. So I'm going to go through now. So yeah, like I said, CS50, it's from Harvard, and if you're not familiar with Edex, which is a platform where a lot of these massive online courses are delivered through. I mean, there's multiple ones. There's Udacity, I think, is another one. Open Learn? I used to use back in the day, but Edex is where I've done the most amount of work on, and I'll talk through some other courses at the end of this video. So yeah, I'd been looking at CS50 generally for a long time now, but I got particularly interested in this one. So I thought, I'll just go through. It's free, and I explained there's a free version and a paid for version. I'll explain the difference as far as I know. So I went for the free track, and the free track's really, very generous in terms of what you can access. So here's the course in sort of overview. So you've got an introduction, functions, variables, conditionals, loops, exceptions, libraries, unit tests, file I/O, regular expressions, object-oriented programming, and then etc. And in the etc. section, and we'll have a look at some of these sections in a moment, what to expect. But in the etc. section, that's where the end of course project is. And we'll get onto that. I'll talk about what project I did, just purely from a front end, in case anybody's curious. Now you'll notice it mentions about verified certificates, and I'll come on to that in a moment. I didn't pay for this, and I still got a certificate, and I'll explain how in a moment. This really impressed me, how this is actually delivered. I've done Edex stuff before, and this had a really interesting twist to it, a really good way that it was set up. So, looking at these, just to explain like my lens on this. So I already know Python. I've never programmed in it professionally. How I learned it was because several years ago, and this you'll see in a moment, actually some of the courses I did a series of courses with Microsoft back in the early days, or earliest days of Edex. And as part of that, it was a data science course. And as part of that course, we had to learn Python. But it was obviously aimed at data science, so a lot of my time was spent learning how to best use the data science libraries that are available in Python. And I did do, a basic course in Python, which was quite hands-on, and you weren't using libraries, but we obviously went into libraries fairly early on. So I've always felt that there's certain things I've missed out on. And what was nice as I went through this, some things in here were just completely new. Like I hadn't really done much work with exceptions. All the stuff I'd done previous to this in other languages came under the area of defensive programming, and I tended to have to do them manually. So in Python you have this whole try except thing, and it was interesting to have that properly explained and to go through it and actually have problem challenges, which we'll come on to in a moment as well, how they work in here. So what was nice, so I had a pretty good understanding of functions and variables and conditionals and loops. It doesn't specifically mention data structures here, but in the course of doing this you do get to explore data structures. But that didn't bother me too much, because obviously I'd done quite a bit of data structures, data framework when I studied Python previously as an adjunct to data science. So this was really useful, it was all useful, but this was really unique. I'd done quite a bit of file I/O work in Python for various reasons. They also cover at some point APIs in here as well, which I'd had some experience of. But the thing that really fascinated me is unit tests, so being able to test functions. That's something I'd not done. Again, a lot of stuff like that, like exceptions and unit tests, I'd sort of done by, inserting sections of test code in code, historically when I'd worked in different languages to test things out. So that was cool to see how that worked. The dreaded regular expressions came up. So anybody that studied regular expressions will know exactly what I mean. I think I've revisited this several times over the years in different languages, different scenarios, and it never gets any easier, for me anyway. And then we had a nice little unit on object-oriented programming as well. That was interesting. Again, I have some experience of working in I'm trying to remember the name of the language now, Smalltalk, and dabbling in Java, but it was nice to see how object-oriented programming is implemented in Python. And again, it's something I hadn't really touched on that much. I was aware of, I know how to create classes, those sort of things generally, and I know, the bits about the whole paradigm and what makes it different from, object-based, functional, other paradigms. But it was nice to actually have to get tested on that with the end of the unit problems. So let's actually have a look at what it looks like once you click into those sections. So generally there's two parts to a section. There's this bit with the video and the slides, and if you've used Edex you can sort of next through everything just runs linearly. So if we were to go on to the next section, we get the video with the transcript and then the ability to download other things as well. And the introduction section is pretty straightforward. Once you get onto, so that's section 0, once you get onto section 1, things get a little bit busier. So in this section there are actually two lots of videos. There was the main one and then there was a supplemental one, and I'll come on to that in a moment. But you can see here, and this is where we get the first mention of problem set. I'll go down this rabbit hole again. This is fairly extensive in terms of accessing the different supplemental materials. So you've got the video itself, the notes, which obviously match very well the actual video. The guy doing this, is it David Matlin? I never remember his second name. Is excellent. Yeah, excellent lecturer. From being a lecturing myself, it's always nice to watch other people do it, and people that are really good at it. So that's interesting to see in action, and certainly it gives you a lot of ideas, particularly the fact that, in parallel with this, he's doing live demos, which is super impressive. If anybody's ever had to do a live demo, will know to do that and to narrate and to teach simultaneously is like next level to me anyway. It's really, and I find I can never do anything like that without some form of side cheat sheet or something, or the ability to maybe copy paste huge sections of code. He was just incredibly impressive. What I'll do with this as well, you can actually watch the whole series of videos on YouTube. They've been uploaded by Harvard in their CS50 channel, so I'll include links to that as well, because that's another way you can just experience the content without just the videos, is by watching the videos on YouTube. In terms of the second set in here with the supplemental video, there was a bit about using Visual Studio Code, which I'll come on to the ports of this in a moment. So the key development environment is Visual Studio Code. Obviously you can do stuff in another IDE if you want to, another Python capable IDE, or you even do it individually, like use any text editor and then just run it in Python. And when I first started doing this course, actually, because it was available online on YouTube, I actually watched the YouTube videos and was coding along in Visual Studio Code, and actually my implementation of Visual Studio Code locally is not great. It's been messed around with quite a bit for various reasons, so I've managed to slightly break it. So I get all these weird error messages sometimes when I first boot it up. So I actually use Spider, and that's mainly because I use Anaconda. So for initially, before I enrolled on the course, I actually went through and tried out a few of the examples that he gave. So just so I get a feel for the speed of the course and whether it was possible to code along, which you can if you're fast enough typing. Just because of the way he teaches, which is this really sort of evolutionary technique where you're sort of, he talks about the problem, does a first pass, and then refines the solution as he goes along, which I really like doing. And then there's interactions with, there's questions from the class. And again, if you watch the video, it's got an interesting setup how they did manage to do this. It looks like it might have been recorded, well, I can't really tell. I mean, maybe it was recorded during COVID, or there might be other reasons why it's quite a different setup from, say, if you're familiar with the main CS50 course and what that looks like if you've seen other videos. But anyway, yeah, you can check it out on YouTube and you'll see what I mean. I don't want to start running other people's content on my videos. So yeah, some of the sections, there'll just be like notes in the video. Other sections, there'll be two sets where there's a supplemental video. I think there's only 2 or 3 sections where that's the case, where there's a second video. And normally the second video is fairly short, and it's just to provide a little bit of a deeper dive or explanation, in this case Visual Studio Code, for the people on the course. But I went through and basically watched everything. I think half the course or more, probably 75% of the course, I did double passes on, in terms of watching the videos multiple times. Again, if you're fast enough typing, you may find most of the time you can do most things on first pass. So yeah. The other thing in terms of picking things up, obviously I'm coming from a position of knowing other languages, knowing a bit of Python. I can't really comment on how someone coming in cold would find this. It does work from the ground up, so you should do pretty well, but you obviously find it a lot harder than I did, I suspect, if you've got no experience of programming and you haven't, you haven't done anything in Python, haven't done anything in anything. You might find yourself having to stop and then go on to some other, like resource to just help iron out a few features. But yeah, I think coming in from a beginner, this is a pretty good course. Again, I'm starting from a slightly, tainted position because I already code. So yeah, the whole way this flows through is excellent. Now this is where it gets really interesting. And I've only seen this happen with one other course I've done on Edex. So, and I imagine this happens with a lot of other courses now because the platform's much more refined. But you'll notice if you were to click on, let me try and find one with, where's it gone? Oops, there we go. The problem set. So, yeah, if you click on the problem set, you end up here in one of these. So this is problem set 0. So you might also notice that the introduction doesn't have a problem set on it. It's only once you start getting into this one. So the introduction is actually before this. Now you'll notice what's happened is you've jumped out of Edex and you're now on CS50 Harvard. So there is a difference here. Now you can access everything through here, and we'll probably see some of that in a moment. But just so you're aware, that's how it does things. That's not a problem. It's just a feature, and it's really useful actually. I used a 3-screen setup. So what I had is this on one screen, then I had the notes on another, and then I had the video or the coding screen on my third screen, depending on where I was. So I'd normally watch the video through first of all, and move the coding screen over to the notes screen, and then do any coding as I went along there. And then once I got through the video, I'd minimize the video, bring up the notes, and then any additional coding, doing the problem set, that sort of setup. So with me, my setup with 3 screens, it was perfect for that. One screen I find a little bit tough for this sort of stuff. I mean, it's doable. I did do a section on the laptop just to try it out, and it just took a lot longer because you were constantly flicking between things. You can get away with one day one of my screens went down, 2 was fine, but 3 is great if you can manage 3 screens. So when you do problem set 0, there's a bit of setup to do before you can get onto the problem sets, because this is great. This is linked to GitHub, so you link it to GitHub. Now that's the other thing. To finish the course, there's 2 additional things you need to do. You need to have set up a GitHub account, which I already had set up, and set up a YouTube account, which I already have. And the YouTube you need, I'll show you at the end why. Or another video sharing site. Yeah, anything that shares videos, but I obviously use YouTube. So this goes through the process. Once you go through these steps, it goes through the process of authorizing through GitHub, and there's obviously anybody that's had to sync up different platforms will know what to expect there. So there's a little bit of extra work in doing that. I didn't have any problems, nothing went wrong. But just a heads up. Yeah, that's you have to do that before you can do any of really this stuff. Once you've done that and you've done this, you then you get access to this cloud-based version of Visual Studio Code. This is also talking to your GitHub account as well, which is really useful. So just so you know, this if you go into the problem set, once you've set this all up, this is what to expect. So you get pretty good description. You get what you need to do before you begin, because for everyone you set up this a folder, and I'll show you in a moment what this looks like. You get a demo of what to expect, and then this great thing, which I'd never had before, which is this testing utility, which they'd obviously done, Harvard had set up. And then you learn about how to do testing as well, which is really cool. And then it gets interesting as you get further into the course, because this thing tests your tests, which is pretty cool. So yeah, this is really useful and helpful. Early on, I found that I didn't go into the hints that much. I'm not saying you shouldn't. And in fact, I found as I got deeper, going into the hints was super helpful. It stopped me going down stupid rabbit holes that I didn't need to go down. Earlier on, what I tended to do is do the coding problem, look at the hints, and then go, oh yeah, that's interesting. It probably would have been better to do it that way. But the earlier stuff is more just reminding you of stuff that's covered in the video. I found as I got deeper in, the hints were better at like pushing you into a slightly extended area of information where it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm better off doing it this way, because it would just make the implementation cleaner. And I'm not going to waste loads of time doing it, because as you get deeper into the course, it's like any language you learn, you work out there's multiple ways of doing things. And so what I was more interested in is doing it in the way that best matched what they were trying to teach you. And so by looking at the hints early on, I got a better feeling for that, as opposed to maybe doing the implementation. I still got the same results, it still passed the test, but then realizing that I wasn't really pushing my knowledge as it related to what we were actually learning in the section. So yeah, this was really cool, and this really impressed me. And again, the only issues I ever had here was because I'm not great at properly reading the problem. So I find I skip through to the point, and this is a historical thing, often I'll take this sort of stuff and then paste it into Word and get Word to read it out. I'm that bad, but it's a problem I've had for forever, since being at school, and I've got better at fixing it. It didn't, it's not, and I find with online stuff as well, it's bad. Just I cured it to a great degree when I did my postgrad with the Open University, but then I had to, because with this you sort of know if you've messed up because of the check tool, but with the Open University you don't really know you've messed up until you get your assignment marked, and that's it. So this is another reason this is really cool. So you can get to check your work before you submit it. If you're curious, because there is a contrast between how the course looks in Edex in terms of navigating it, and how it looks in through the lens of the CS50 site, and it's the same information, it's just laid out slightly differently. And so I normally found I tended once I was in here, I stayed in here. So, I had this screen up. I wasn't really using the Edex interface that much. I was using the Harvard one much more. And there's, reasons for that anyway. But yeah, particularly this stuff, because everything's nicely laid out here. You can see for each week, you've got the notes, the slides, the PDF, the source code for the notes, all the transcripts, the videos, YouTube, if you want to go through YouTube, and then the project stuff. So this was the final week with the project. So yeah, these were instructions for the final project. And you also found as you went along, in some units you had to create both a an actual, for the problem, you had to create the solution file, but also a test file. But that didn't happen really until obviously after you did about unit tests. But some of these later units, you actually doubled up on the programming challenges. Now, most of the times the programming challenges were anything between 3 to 6 challenges. But I did find that when I got onto this section, it was taking me a lot longer to get through the challenges because I was having to both code the actual solution for the problem and a thing to test it. Now, generally the tests don't take as much work, but it's an extra overhead. So when you come on to do the final project, they want you to actually create a project and create a test for the project. And you again, just with this, just make sure you read it. There's some example project structures which are really useful just to see, how the structure within the Python code, basic structure. So that gave you a clue as to really what they were sort of expecting in terms of the volume of work. But it just says things like, it should be more than, the effort required to do the previous project, previous challenges. Yeah. So I think I ended up spending, I don't know, about 3 or 4 days on and off doing the final project, just thinking about it, that sort of stuff. And it was, enough time that I wanted to spend on this. Time-wise, and, time at the moment is something I've got, on my hands. So I'm, was able to dedicate a good chunk of my day on these units. And I tended to find that with the earlier units where I'd watched the video beforehand, I then spent between the hours of 10 in the morning till about 5 in the afternoon on and off just going through the programming challenges, and that was enough to get through, these I suppose are a week. So, if you have a day to work on stuff, you could get through these in a day. Most people don't have the luxury of that position. And back when I was working full time, generally I did stuff like this, a couple of hours in the morning, I'd get up early and do it, or end of day, or even at lunch times during the day. Of course, that's always a recipe for burnout, but it's I'm super familiar with. So it's difficult to know when they do give an estimate of how long this stuff takes, but it's something you just have to work with. It's I think the maximum you can spend on this course is like 3 months, and you would be able to complete this in 3 months. I think if you said you allocated like a week for each of these, you would be able to do it. My reason why I'm being hesitant is I do get the impression that if you haven't done coding before, you can just spend hours on these seemingly straightforward programming challenges in order to meet all the criteria from these units. Obviously, one of the advantages where you're choosing your own project is you get to sort of pick your fights. When you're doing programming challenges which are really specific, they're going to push you in areas where you're not strong. Depending on what you're setting yourself up to do as a challenge within your project, you may decide to play to your strengths. So, in that respect, although you've got to do a lot more coding, the stuff you're doing might be stuff you're more familiar with. With me, when I'm doing programming challenges or the final project, I try and get a mix of both. So, stuff that I'm familiar with, and then doing additional stuff that I maybe wanted to explore that didn't get fully developed in the course. And again, it's just personal preference. But again, I reiterate, make sure you read the questions. But again, it's really set out nicely exactly how to submit this, what you need to do. So this is where having a YouTube channel factors in. You have to record this little 3-minute video. So there's basically 4 documents you have to produce. Well, more than 4 actually if you decide to use multiple Python files. So you've got your Python file, you've got your test file, you've got a README file. So I ended up writing about 600 plus words around the project. And then you have a requirements.txt, which just has really the any import library, any libraries that you might have to import for your project. In addition to having imports in the code, you have to list in the requirements.txt any libraries you've used, just so that anybody that maybe had a base install of Python would know what stuff they need to pip install when they do that. So yeah, it's a bit about trouble submitting. I had no trouble submitting this, to be honest with you. Yeah, I had more problems recording the video because it's not supposed to be more than 3 minutes long, so that made me laugh. So I took about 6 attempts. Took 2 attempts to get it below 3 minutes, and then 4 other attempts to basically just not just to cover what I wanted to cover, which was a quick demo of the program. Here's what the progress chart looks like through this end. So you can see there's my progress through Edex. It has, I don't know if you could see that, actually I didn't highlight it, but somewhere here, every one of these sections which cover a problem or an assignment, whatever you want to call it, coding challenge, including the project, have a reference to your gradebook. So here's what the gradebook looks like, and as you submit these, do the final submission on them, these get ticked off. So here's a good overview actually of all the different problems. So you can see most of these, what you got, 5, 4, this one was quite long. That one was only 4. So from this point onwards, really, this is once they started factoring testing Python testing files. So obviously it was in this one where you had to end up producing 2 lots of code, one for the actual program, one for the test program. And I think in at least one of these, maybe 2, you also had to do some test stuff on certain ones, which was cool. It was nice as well when you got onto certain ones, they'd mention whether or not they specifically wanted you to focus on like a function, or they'd give you some suggestions for the regex one, which library to use. But there was a get out on this. It actually said you didn't have to use the regex library if you didn't want to, so you could code it using other methods. And there's ways of doing that. There's alternatives to using regex in Python, but I'd stuck with using regex. I didn't really want to end up with loads of spaghetti code using case statements and string functions and methods and stuff like that, which I probably could have done, but I was much more keen to try out or revisit regular expressions. The object-oriented section was pretty interesting as well. I found that. So really, these last 3 took me the most amount of time to complete. I think most of them. I think 2 out of the 3 started to spill over into 2 days of coding. And the final project, like I said, I don't know. It was probably 4 days on and off, just thinking of ideas that I wanted to try. It's good I've got back into what I call coding in my head. which I'd sort of lost, and it reintroduced me. So having the GitHub connection is really cool, because as you submit these, they end up on GitHub on your account. So yeah, they're all on the account there. Oh, that's restarted itself, hasn't it? I'm going to have to log back in again. Okay, so this is the thing. Yeah, if you leave code space long enough. So the nice thing with this is you have this online coding environment. So I did everything in the end on this. So when you first started up, which is quite good this happened, when you log in through it, and there's a connection to it when you're doing the problem set. So in the problem set, it'll have the login that you need to log into CS50 dev. And obviously when you do problems at 0, you're setting it up at that point. When you log in the first time, it asks you to refresh it. And also I notice periodically every day, if it does suggest, it does strongly recommend you do that before each assignment set. But I also noticed it prompted it as well when there was a change to the environment, so you just have to refresh it. When you log in, eventually this gets populated with all the coding you've done so far. You get a terminal window. It's basically just like regular, if you're used to Visual Studio Code, behaves in a similar way. Everything's down here. You can see there's some custom CS50 stuff. But I use this to ultimately do all the coding in the end. I switched over to this and stopped using like local implementations, simply because when you're doing the assignments, of course you need to be able to do that to run this stuff at the end here. It's just a lot easier to do the submissions. Yeah, I'm not even sure how you do it outside of not using this. I'm assuming there is a way. So there's the final project. Let me just CD into project. Boom. Yeah, the other thing is when you go in and out, just make sure that when you log back in again, if you've been previously working on a project, you remember to go back into the folder you're in. So this is my thing. So I'm just going to run this to just show you what I ended up doing. Where are we? Make sure I don't inadvertently resubmit everything, which wouldn't be good. There's the test. So if you're running the test, that's what it looks like. So obviously I've got a file in there that I did that for. Where are we? Yeah, there we go. Boom. So basically I ended up writing a program to explore artist release and information in the Music Brains open source music encyclopedia using the API. So we enter, I'll just show you one pass through this. Let's enter SlowDive. So the whole point of this project was for me to kick the tires on the API, because it was an API I hadn't used before. So comes back with a list of matches. I've locked it down, so obviously if you put in something that's not on the list, so 0 is 1, then comes back on releases that people have entered into that Music Brains database. It's an open source like community database, so it's always interesting to see what sort of anomalies might be in there. And then second table it produces is is up to the first 100 album entries on there, which is a slightly different search. And so this table uses a library. This uses a little function I created to pass in some text and then create a box around it. All of the searches, there's 3 functions that do the various searches, and a whole load of other code that just does some test shenanigans, some defensive programming, some try, except stuff to basically catch when the API sort of fails for any reason, or there's an issue with the request, or there's missing rows, or it was basically, the way I'd got it set up was return lists of dictionaries, and where the query as I iterated through the query results, because the query results that are generated come back and then you have to convert them to JSON, and then as I iterated through the JSON structures, sometimes there would be missing information and I needed to skip over that. So there was all sorts of interesting stuff like that. It then loops back round. So really it's just a way, I wanted a way for me to, like I say, kick the tires on Music Brains. It's something I've been looking at for doing for a long while now. So it was a great opportunity to just do this as a little project. And then ultimately over time I'm going to expand on this. So if we pick another artist, like say Queen, there we go. So and again, it gives you a feel for how is Music Brain returning information. It's returning like similar results for stuff. Again, with this, it only returns the top 100 results. I'd obviously have to work on this. It was primarily aimed for doing, bands with not so much release stuff. That was the reason behind it, was to explore, when I discovered a new band that had come out recently, like finding out within, within the community that submit to Music Brains, how much information was out there about the releases. And so one of these tables is searches in order of release. The second table searches in order of album titles or release titles. Album titles, because I've got it filtering on albums as well. There's all sorts of filtering going on under the bonnet in here as well. So it was an interesting exercise, and it's something I wanted to play around with. So then if you do that, just bye for now. I know this is turning into a long video, but I really wanted to do the course justice, because there is a lot of other videos out there about the course, but I'm never sure whether some people have ever actually properly taken the course. There's a lot out there where they have, but I wanted one that really explored, the ins and outs of this, and just showed you through. Not that I was trying to show off my own project, which is pretty simple actually, but I just wanted to sort of show you really the interface in here, and obviously the code itself. I've got that pushed up out the way there, but there's all the code in there. But this was really cool. I do like this idea that you can just do everything online. You've got all the timeline down here, so you can go back. There's also, obviously, if you're familiar with Visual Code, you probably know how this all works. I just wanted to talk a little bit about Edex itself. So I've been using it for a long time now, and you can see from back in the day, around 2017 was when I really used it a lot for a data science course that I did back then. With these it was slightly different. So with these I did actually pay to have these what's the term they use here, upgraded, but back then I think the cost of doing that was like $50 or something. So I worked and this one I think was free actually. I did this and then completed the course, passed it, and then upgraded it to get a certificate, really. You can't do that so much nowadays, and I'll come on to that in a moment, because it does relate to this course. So when you do the final step of the course and you go into the Gradebook, up the top here, this is where you can access your certificate. So you do get a certificate from Harvard, which is cool, and this is still free. The verified certificate from Edex, there's a a cash quantity involved, which is not a small amount. It's $200, I think. So just so you know, with this particular course, and this is not true of a lot of courses on Edex, but it's true of this one, you can get a certificate if you complete this course from Harvard, and you don't have to pay anything extra. So I did all this course for free, and I could access all the assignments. You don't get a grade, or I don't know what happens if you say miss out on a assignment because you can't do it. It grades you against that, but I don't really see a grade here. In other courses that I did under Edex, there was a grade. Like I said, those earlier ones. Now, prior to this, I'd use things like FutureLearn, and there is another one whose name escapes me, Coursera, as well. I've done some stuff on Coursera, but most of the stuff I've done through these sort of MOOC platforms is through Edex. And like I also said, things have got a lot more expensive than when I first started using it. Most of the certificates back then were like $25-50 a pop, and yeah, for me that was sort of money well spent. Again, I could have completed these and not done a certificate, and at that point I can't remember if you could do the assignments without. Well, yeah, you could actually, yeah, because that's what I did. I sort of did the assignments and then went for just verification. The verification step just involved some sort of additional way of verifying who you were. I think I had to submit some images and various other things just to validate that I was taking it. So going forward, one of the reasons I wanted to do this, and if you've lasted to the end here, thank you very much, but this is really the handing over to people that watch my channel. So I'm definitely going to go through and explore the other CS50 courses where you can go through and actually do all the assignments and complete it for free, and then seeing whether you do get a certificate. I won't be covering anywhere I discover that you can't do assignments in it, or you can't get that there's a tick mark somehow. So I'm going to work out which ones of these, and you can see if you search these, a dead giveaway of being part of the CS50 program is the banner headline here. So with these, and also you'll notice, I think you can see, where's it gone? Maybe not now. Yeah, this one's a bit of a weird one. I'm never sure with this whether it's part of the CS50 or not. I thought there was another one that also did data science, which was part of CS50. Maybe it is, but I'll know. Again, this is part of the reason I want to do this in the long term, is go through these and then get feedback through videos. So yeah, I'm going to do a series. I don't know how regular it's going to be, where I'll be doing online courses through Edex at the moment, the CS50 stuff, and then sort of reporting back. So yeah, so one of the things about these, if you want to check them out yourself and find out, is to go into them and then scroll down to the bottom here and find out what the free component contains. Now, like I said, when I did the CS50P, it definitely allowed me to, as you can see, take all the graded assignments and do the final project. With this one, which is another CS50 course, which is the Computer Science Principles, it would appear on first look that you can't. But that's part of the reason I want to do a series, is to try out and see and register for the free program and see what's available. I know with some of these you definitely can go through, like I did with CS50P, and do that. But that's one of the reasons I want to properly go in and do all of these. But you get this weird thing sometimes, and I've noticed this, where here's the full CS50s. So CS50 Introduction to Computer Science. So this was the CS50 Computer Science Principles. And I come down here and there's no mention suddenly of the stuff. And I've noticed there's this variability. Also, what you experience through the app is slightly different as well. Although and I didn't use the app for this beyond watching the videos under Edex, so I don't know how well it integrates with this. So I did all the course, I did on a computer, whereas in the past, on certain courses, certainly what I was doing was downloading videos and watching them when I was commuting. But for this course, this was all done predominantly on my main computer. One day I did do it on a laptop because I wanted to see what the experience was like. Like sitting outside on the deck wasn't great because just I benefited from the multi-screens. And on several occasions I decided to just watch the videos on my tablet, on my iPad. So just so you know there. So hopefully this has provided a really good overview. And to the level that I like to see overviews, really extensive, and just showing you the various areas. One thing I will say as well, like if anybody's interested in me maybe looking at some other courses that they're curious about on these platforms and doing a bit of a poke around, then let me know, because I would consider doing them. Obviously at the moment I'm going to be primarily focusing on the CS50 stuff just because it aligns with what I want to do. So I'm going to just find what is like the lowest level CS50 course, so maybe these ones, and see if they're available to do and do the assignments and get it properly finished and get a certificate issued. So that's where I'm going with this. So thanks for watching. Obviously I appreciate anybody that stuck to the end here. It's a pretty long video, but I felt that this really needed a proper look at if you're curious about these courses. So yeah, bye for now, and I will catch you in a future video.